Hey, welcome to Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and on this show, I interview the movers and the shakers in the world of property development and real estate. Now, this show is sponsored by something that few developers have quietly been using to get their projects funded and sold faster. Now, that is without touching the traditional 3D models. It's early, it's clever, and it's changing how people see off-plan property. I'll leave it there, but if you're curious, message me on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer Online or check out the show notes below. So, today I am joined by Chad Kirkeguard. Now, he is Director of Business Development at T Diamond Bar, a self-performing industrial contractor delivering civil, concrete, and mechanical piping and structural steel solutions across the oil, gas, biofuels, and manufacturing sectors. Chad, really appreciate you coming on to the show. Thanks for taking time out of your day to come chat with me. So I appreciate that.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. So yeah, let's dive into today's discussion. So one question I ask all of my guests is, if time travel became a reality and you had a chance to go back in time, Chad, to when you were first started your career, what advice would the person that you are now actually tell your younger self?
Wow, that's a great question. Probably invest in the video would be first. No, just kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Pour all your money in. No, honestly, learning that relationships matter so much. Dealing in high dollar facilities, relationships are real and they matter, and it's not transactional. It can't be transactional. So I would probably just tell myself, take every meeting you can take, learn from everybody you can learn, build your network earlier. I had a unique history in how I started my career and where I've come from and kind of different industries and things I worked through, and just continue to build that even more robustly than I have. I feel like I've done a pretty good job of it now, but it took me a while to get there. And I would probably say just jump in it earlier.
Yeah.
Just get to know everybody and anybody and help them where you can, even if it doesn't help you, because it's all about building relationships. And so I think
Yeah.
that's probably where I would start.
Nice. And Chad, T Diamond Par self-performs across multiple core scopes. You know, you've got your civil site prep, your casting in place concrete, your structural steel, your mechanical piping. So, from a client's perspective, how important is that level of control when you're trying to firstly reduce the risk, reduce timelines and that coordination issues on these really complex industrial builds? How do you do that?
I think it's vital that they can have one neck to ring, for lack of a better term. You get a lot of moving parts going at once. A lot of times it's very tight timelines. It's a lot of scheduled demands that are driven by liquidated damages or things like that. And if you're
Hmm.
trying to coordinate five or six scopes, with five or six different companies, it's very difficult for the client themselves. Their representation's got to be on the game, and they've got to be uh, willing to work together. And not that we're not willing to partner, and we do work with other contractors on site a lot, because there are scopes that we do not perform in house. But having the ability for us to do that, it's for them. It helps us to control the cost. It's all our own people. So, we're not waiting on people to bring other manpower to site, and, they tell us they will, and 3 weeks later, there's still not enough people on site. Or, we control the manpower, we control the schedule. In that same vein, if we need to speed it up, we can add guys. If we can need to reduce it, stretch it out and save some costs, we can do that. Um, it also allows us to control the quality of the work on site. It's so important to us that we put out a quality product, and we don't want to we're not just trying. We tell people all the time, we're not trying to build just this facility. We want to build all of them, and you don't do that by putting together a shoddy product.
Yeah.
So we try to do that. And the last one for us in those four legs is safety. The industry it's crucially important that you send your people home safe every night, and
Yeah.
being able to control who we hire, what our standards are, hold them to our standards, whether it be drug and alcohol testing or all the OSHA required training that they've got to meet, and so we feel like that's an advantage that we provide that a lot of our competitors don't, especially a GC that just doesn't self-perform. They have the ability to manage, but you're managing 4 or 5 different people, and the more personalities that get in the mix, the more companies that have their philosophies that get in the mix, you run the risk of creating chaos where, and it might be cheaper in the end if you're going to a local contractor. Sometimes we're not local. We work all over the United States, but that's our advantage. We're flexible, we're nimble, those kind of things. So, it's just it's a different school of thought. There's not one right or wrong. Both have been very successful. But for us, I think just being able to present and show, hey, this is a way for us to control the site, to control any cost escalations. We're having discussions early because we know early it's not a hidden something that's going to pop out of nowhere. We're performing all of the work. So
Yeah. Nice. Oh, don't tell me.
so I think that's a huge advantage.
Yeah. So, Chad, you're working across sectors, like oil and gas, your biogas, your biofuels, your manufacturing, all of these different sites. Are you seeing a shift in what types of facilities are actually being built? And where do you think the biggest growth opportunities are starting to emerge in this space?
I don't know that there's necessarily a shift to a different type of facility necessarily across the board. I think you're seeing more of them or more diverse options. You're seeing more markets emerge. I know for us, most of us are traditionally, midstream oil and gas facilities that we've done in our careers to this point. We typically have done a lot of natural gas and liquid terminals. We've done compressor stations and natural gas processing facilities. And now we're kind of evolving into, the biogas space that's relatively new here in the United States. It's kind of in its boom. Well, it's kind of slow at the moment, but it's been in its boom in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say. And, across that, you're starting to see, landfills, agricultural sites. You've got food waste, you've got wastewater. So you're getting diversity in maybe what the feedstock or where the energy source is coming from, but I don't know if the facilities are necessarily shifting, let's say. But you do have biofuels. You've got sustainable aviation fuel is a new emerging market that's trying to come around and make it. The economics are tough sometimes to make those make sense, but it's definitely a work in progress. I would say the biggest, if you're talking about the biggest market that everybody's talking about right now, would be the data centers, and especially
That was
whether
going
it's
to be my very next question is the data
yeah,
center.
the campuses themselves or the power to get those campuses powered. There's two different sides of that. We're exploring those opportunities. I would call us a mid-sized contractor. We're not your local roustabout company out there, but we're not some of these massive EPC firms that are roaming around as well. So some of these campuses are just so large. There's so many buildings, there's so much complexity to them, and the dollar values get inflated pretty quickly as far as out of our range of reach. And so I think the power side of that for us is going to be a place where we can have some advantages to our skill sets. It falls in line with a lot of our natural gas processing history and those kind of things, and the ability. We tell people all the time, if you got a plan, pipe is pipe, concrete is concrete, buildings are buildings. We can build about anything you want. We're pretty diverse. And I think there's a place there for us in that market. And I've actually been spending a lot of time. I was in Phoenix 3 weeks ago. I was in New York City last week, just exploring that market because it's a place we know we need to be, because I think it's going to be the future for a while. It'll tighten up. Everybody will start to dial in a little bit, but right now it's a little bit of the Wild West where we have money, get it built, let's go, and so that's what we're trying to figure out how to make that work. But I would say for sure, shifting that way, power generation to be able to power those, with the advent of AI and all the power that's required there. That's it's a problem that if anybody can solve, economically for sure, how to
Yeah.
produce that and not strain the grid at the same time, whether that's behind the meter or supplementing the grid or, whatever that is. But
Yeah.
it's definitely some challenges ahead with that. But I think it's a market where you're going to see a lot of opportunity.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And then within industrial projects, it often involves owners, engineers, operators, financial stakeholders. So, how do you typically communicate the layout, the operational flow, and the constructability before construction even begins so that every one of those stakeholders is aligned? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we're not an EPC firm. We don't do a lot of in-house engineering. We do have partners we utilize on those fronts. So we can, if we're approaching a project from that perspective where we're partnering with an outside firm, then it's just, to me, it's as simple as get everybody to the table, whether that be virtually or sitting in the same room helps a lot too.
Yeah.
To just sit down and what is your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? How much footprint do you have? Is there enough land here for this? Where can we condense? Do we have to have this much capacity initially at the start? There's all these things and layers to that. So if you're EPCing it, those are conversations you've got to have early. But for us, more often than not, we're 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 just acting as the general contractor. So whether that's an engineering firm reaching out to us or the developer themselves reaching out to us, but either way, our goal is to get involved as early as possible because we can
Yeah.
help with constructability, and we do that a lot. And we don't charge for it. It's just our way of saying, hey, we're going to be a good partner to you. Let us get involved early because it's going to help us when it comes time to truly price it with a real dollar amount. And then it's also going to allow them to be able to make changes. Just say, hey, this is, this is what we're thinking. Do you have a better idea? Can we lay this out better? Is there a way to reduce this concrete scope? You name it, whatever it is. So we try to get involved as early as possible.
Yeah.
And the earlier we can get involved, I think that the more dialed in we can help them be. We can help engineering understand, hey, I may not need this drawing necessarily at all. And if I do, I don't need it immediately. We can help them prioritize staying ahead because that's a huge part of a lot of these projects, especially you get into these alternative energy sources that don't have a long history.
Mm.
You're creating facilities kind of on the fly sometimes, and they've got deadlines. It's if we don't have gas flowing by X date, we're not able to get our tax credits for this year, or we're not able to, get liquidated damages with the landfill, or whatever the situation calls for. So we've got to be able to speed that up, and
Yeah.
that's what I tell people all the time. And when you're in early development, let us get involved. We'll tell you, hey, this is going to go together nicely. Maybe we could prefab some of this stuff off site. Maybe we can, get with your engineering team, whatever that is. But the earlier the better is what I tell people.
Yeah.
And,
And
if we can,
it seems to be a common sort of shift, whether it's speaking to architects, to quantity surveyors, to civil grounds works, all of them pretty much say the same thing. We need
yep,
to get in early.
yep,
And we all need to be part of the process really early on because having that getting in early is just basically you're ironing out all the errors that could happen early on.
yep,
So
right.
yeah,
It,
it seems
it
to be
may,
a common theme, to be honest.
and it
So
might be something that, it might be something to finish that point. It may cost them a little time on the front end, but it's going to save them a
yeah,
lot of money on the backside. And
yeah,
that's where we try to, like, look, you need to reduce the operating, the capital expenditure here so that you can, make these projects make sense a lot of times. And
yeah,
another thing we try to do as well is get operations involved. A lot of people kind of forget about them. They're like, hey, we're building this, here it is. And the guys are like, this is a terrible layout. Like, I can't get to that valve. I can't get to this. This is not functional for us. And so
Yeah.
we've had to go back into some other facilities that were designed by others and help, remove a spool piece and just totally reroute pipe, because it's not a helpful layout when it comes to even checking a meter, or something that's just
Yeah.
not accessible. And so,
And that's a prime
operations being
example.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a prime
Yeah.
example of getting everybody involved, you know,
Right.
because yeah, that could have been avoided if
Right.
you got people involved in the first place.
Correct.
But yeah, so when you're pitching a new facility or you're expanding, do you rely mainly on drawings and plans, or have you explored the more visual approaches like the 3D modeling or 3D walkthroughs to help your clients better understand the end result?
A little bit of both. Again, not having engineering in house, a lot of that's kind of determined for us before we get to that point. But we've done projects both ways, and we've walked through um, layouts and things with clients, both from a true drawing, ISOs and PNIDs and things like that,
Hmm.
versus a 3D Navisworks type model or something like that as well. So we've been able to utilize both. I
Yeah,
think having the model to physically see, how this is going to work, and you're not always going to get all the information there, but you get a pretty good idea of how this,
yeah,
how busy is this building going to be? Can we actually functionally put this together? Uh, you know, there's 3 miles of pipe inside that building. Can we get this done? And so what's the order? What's the sequencing? I think it helps. I think it helps to have
yeah,
them say, hey, um, this is what it looks like. Is that going to be functional? Again, right back to the previous question, bring your operations team to the table as well. And we've done a few projects here lately that are, speed was so crucial that we were building off a model where it's not quite as vital to have a full ISO drawing or things like that, to get that done. Or we can truly just pull a measurement and, point A to
hmm,
point B. We know the routing based on what that model looks like, and we can field build a lot of that and then come back with as built drawings at the end of it, to present to the client to have a QC package at the end. But I think there's an advantage to both. The more drawings, the better designed you are. Again, that's going to help get your costs down and not leave as much risk and contingency in the project on our
yeah,
end of it. But we've built some pretty impressive facilities from a model as well.
yeah,
And getting drawings handed to us in the field on the fly. Asking for sequencing. Like, because we're already there. We're ahead of the engineering at that point, because they've got to go. And so I think both can be an advantage. We definitely like to get a model's helpful for sure, but
yeah.
not vital. It's something that we're uh, constantly wrestling with, and I think there's some advantages to both sides of that.
Yeah. And then building on to that question, have you found that when clients actually can visualize the facilities, things like your equipment placement, access
Mm-hmm.
routes, workflows, that sort of stuff, does it help speed up the decision making and reduce changes in later on in the project? Or are there
In
still little bits where they need to make the changes every now and again?
I mean, you're always going to have minor changes. Our goal is always to avoid these major wholesale changes once you've kind of committed to a design, to a process. So I think in that vein, being able to see it, to understand it, make it's a lot easier to make a move of a foundation or something, a building, on a model or in a drawing than it is when you've put a foundation 4 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet in the ground. And
Definitely.
so our goal is to get as much of that done. And then if we have misses or ideas, be a good partner, be in conversation. How can we remedy this quickly, and give our expertise at the same time? Like, bring your field people to the table in those conversations to say, hey, this, my experience, we need to do X, Y, and Z to fix this remedy.
Yeah.
The biggest issue we would see, in that same vein, is as long as they don't make equipment changes, because right now equipment lead times on major process equipment, especially in the energy industry, is a long way out. Especially getting to the power side, transformers, they're a year plus, on a lot of these
Yeah.
projects. We had a visit last week with a client looking to do some projects, and we're hoping we're further along in this conversation, and they're talking about construction in February of 27 because the equipment skids are 40 to 45 weeks out and they haven't ordered them yet. And so it's like,
Wow.
well, we're not going to get started anytime soon, because every day we don't sign that deal is a day
Yeah.
that
There's
that
another day
equipment's not being fabricated. Yeah, so it's that's the challenges we face. It's timing, it's sequencing. How do we balance getting some early earthwork and civil done, uh, but not being there where you've got to mobilize to site 2 or 3 times, with equipment sequencing and different orders of arrival. And it's a delicate balance. But
Yeah.
back to your point, I think being able to see what they want, get that layout worked out earlier, but at the same time working with what's already on order. If you've already got a compressor on order, and can we work with what we've got coming so we don't have to totally scrap this and push this thing back another 20, 30 weeks. There's things like that. So yeah, there's so many moving parts to it. It sounds a lot simpler in theory than it is a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, Chad, thank you very much for coming on the show, sharing your expertise in the industry. Also, like to take this opportunity to thank my listeners and viewers of YouTube as well. Hope you found today's episode informative. Chad, before we finish up, if listeners or viewers want to get in touch and get in contact with you at T Diamond Bar, how do they actually do that?
Sure, they can visit our website. There's some contact us forms. That's just tdiamondbar.com. The letter T, the word diamond, the word bar all together. So they can go there. We're active on our LinkedIn page, our corporate LinkedIn page there. I manage all the social media on that side of it. So if you need me directly, you can message us there. And then I'm active on LinkedIn as well. You can find me to reach out directly. We've got an RFQ. If you're looking for quotes, RFQ at tdiamondbar.com is the way to do that. So yeah, we're willing to talk about if we're building facilities, and we don't really care the industry. We tell people all the time we're pretty agnostic, whether it's food and beverage, or waste products, or energy manufacturing. We've done a lot of different things. We were able
Yeah.
to build a latex rubber plant. Not a lot of people have done that here in the U.S. lately, and so we were able to do some of that. And our guys
Nice.
are sharp. Our guys in the field are sharp. When it comes to putting together processing facilities of any kind. So we'd be glad to talk to you.
Nice. Thank you very much. And
Sure.
uh, quick reminder, this episode was supported by a PropTech visual platform that is changing how forward-thinking developers plan, pitch, and sell. It's not mainstream yet, but it will be. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you know where to find me. You've been listening to Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and today I was joined by Chad Kirkeguard. Thanks again for listening and watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.